And really where I see these things is through the prism of technology enhancing tradition. Is there a snowball's chance that my kids or grandkids can keep my name, my brand on that piece of dirt?
As ranchers, the reality for our industry is that the way forward may look different than the way it's always been done. Chip Kemp with 701X is my guest today as we have a very reflecting conversation about how precision agriculture or technology is part of that, quote, moving forward. Everything from monitoring our bulls and our cows to really our overhead costs in labor and in time.
Everything we do, everything we talk about is an HR play. What if I could tell you, and you can, put a water monitor there that integrates with these wearable devices, throw these tags in the group of heifers you sent over there or the old cows that you sent over there, and every single day you can say, okay, everything's healthy, they're all there, they're in their fence, and I can tell they're drinking water, the water's not frozen.
Technology. It isn't here to replace good stockmanship, but it might just be the key to doing more with less and keeping ranching viable for the future. That's on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. We welcome you here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills. As you heard there in the opening, Chip Kemp is with us here today as we're talking about how technology and precision agriculture is integrating with our industry and really reflecting on this in terms of how we move forward with that. And I think you'll find today's conversation extremely beneficial for all ages, all aspects of those of us in the ranching industry. We'll get to that in just a few moments. I did want to hit on this. If you missed something here today, you want to go back and listen via podcast, you can go to workingranchradio.com. You can find our shows there, or if you have a preferred podcast provider, you can do it there as well. And also, it's very helpful. Leave us a rating or a review. That's helpful as well. So then we know if we're on target with some of the shows we have. We always appreciate those comments as well. One more thing before we get into our show here today, the fall issue. It is the September-October issue of Working Ranch magazine is out. I'm sure for those of you that have a subscription, you've had the opportunity to get through it. If you haven't already, as always, full of a lot of great articles, stories, and features. In fact, it also has the annual Cattle Care Catalog as part of this issue. So check it out. It is the September-October issue. If you don't have a subscription, you can go to workingranchmag.com and you can start one today. Or you can also stop by your local Tractor Supply store and pick one up right there off the shelf. And a shout out to the Tractor Supply store in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and in Ashland, Kentucky, in Bandera, Texas, and in Bangor, Maine. Well, let's turn towards our subject at hand here today. And joining us on the program is Chip Kemp, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for 701X. And Chip, good to have you here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Justin, it is great to be back. It's been too long.
Yeah, it has. And you're definitely somebody that I have reached out to from time to time about different topics in our industry. Real quick, maybe before we jump into some of this, I'm not doing this for a real big sales pitch for 701X, but just real briefly explain what 701X is. We've had them on the show one time a couple years ago, but I think that will help integrate our conversation here today because we're going to be talking a little bit about where precision agriculture is and how it can be, its play is into our industry here today.
Yeah, thank you for that. So to me, when we start talking about some of these things, it can get kind of heady, kind of fast, and that's unintentional. So I like to keep it simple because I'm a simple hillbilly and it's good for me. And really where I see these things is through the prism of technology enhancing tradition. We value the tradition and we value the culture. And I have yet to meet a cattle producer whose primary goal is well beyond dollars. It's well beyond stuff. It is there a snowball's chance that my kids or grandkids can keep my name, my brand on that piece of dirt? Can they keep it on the gate? And so let's recognize that and embrace it and accept it and respect it. Now, there are a heck of a lot of challenges. And if we continue, there's also not a grandfather I've met who thinks his kids or grandkids can do this the same way and stay in business 20 years from now. So we have various technological tools that come to play. They're used all over the place. A very simple analogy. My mother lives alone in the same farmhouse I grew up in. Why is it that us boys require her to wear an Apple Watch? so that we can know her safety, her things that are going on in her life, and feel like we're being responsible stewards as best we can. Same basic premise. How do we do that here? And so when I joined the 701X team, it kind of came out of the blue when they approached me one day. And I've known each other mostly from my time in the breed association space and the genetic evaluation space, of which I'm still very, very close to and work with daily. But in those spaces, we had so many data points, but sometimes we didn't have the tool that encompassed those data points into an actionable item that could solve a pain point for somebody. And that's where, when I came in touch with the folks at 701X, it's like, you all are actually solving problems like every day. That's what you do. You address different problems with different value propositions from a different seat, and we change lives. And that may sound a little bit hyperbolic, but I can give you many examples of how that's true. And so what does 701X specifically do? 701X makes a suite of wearable devices. It's a fancy name for fancy tags that we can utilize in cattle all across the U.S. and in other places as well. And it allows us to recognize that cows don't talk the language we talk. But this tag allows us to communicate with them in a way that we can understand when they're eating, when they're ruminating, when they're walking, when they're resting. We get a variety of health alerts. We understand, we can see estrus information, we can see mounting information. And so we know where they're at any point in time. The basic point is anywhere in North America, they can connect either cell or satellite. So we actually know where they're at. And a lot of times that's enough. But in many cases, there's a whole suite of things that we'll kind of elaborate on it during the conversation. So that to me was the difference, was we were able to start taking all the decision and data points that I've been so excited about my whole career and put them in tangible action steps that gives a push to somebody's phone who's in their pocket. Even if they want to pretend like that phone's not in their pocket, you and I know the reality is it is. And so now it's boiling all these things down into answers, solutions, that address problems.
Yeah. It's interesting, Chip, when I asked you that question a bit ago, and I wrote down here, solve a problem, just about the moment that came out of your mouth. And I see where precision technology, as you and I alluded to when we were talking before we went on air, a lot of times we've seen it first evolving in the farming industry, but we're seeing it now definitely more in the ranching industry in various aspects, with ear tags being one of those methods. Solving a problem is where I see this being evolving from. But one of the concerns I've got, and I see this, of course, with social media being so much more prevalent today than it was years ago, then you have more conspiracy theory out there of things, of people throwing ideas. Well, this is why they're doing it. They're doing this so that the government can do that for, against us. And I look back to this particular and some of the things that I see, and we're going to talk about later on, is really let's throw that out right here in this conversation today, because it really is about what can we do with this technology to solve some problems.
Amen, Justin. And so first of all, let me throw out anybody who has an interest in knowing how we think and how we operate. This is an open invitation. The office is downtown, Fargo, North Dakota. I assure you, any and everybody are welcome. I'd ask you to call first, but if you don't, so be it. And the beauty is, what you're going to see is the mentality is this suite of products that 701X generates, that includes the wearable devices, but also includes what I firmly believe, and this comes with some life experience, to be the most robust herd management system that exists on the planet. But that herd management integrates into registry and eval information. So it becomes an ecosystem. Okay. So it isn't good software, good hardware. We're ranchers. We don't care about that stuff. We just want solutions. And so these are an integrated approach where you just wrap hardware and software together. Everything is a U.S. made product by a passionate team of folks who are put together by a gentleman, Kevin Bifford, our founder, who he's as enthusiastic about supporting the independent beef producer as anybody you will meet. So to your direct question, the proposition here is there are numerous problems within our business that each of us can recognize. And we don't all face the same ones. But if we can address those things, whether it is the fact that it's taken way too long to put some of these precision ag tools in place in the beef business, right? I get it. I dream of the day I can smash my iPhone with a hammer. Let's be practical. That's not going to happen, right? And so it's not going to get to happen because that's the world we live in now. We can pretend and we can want it to be something else. But if we do that, then we set our kids and grandkids up for failure because it's not the way they're going to get to operate. And these tools are prevalent in nearly every other business. And to your point, they're becoming very prevalent in ours. And so it allows us to make this more profitable for us in the near term, more manageable, and it gives a roadmap for potentially successive generations to go, that looks a little bit more appealing because all of a sudden mom and dad are able to use some just normal tools. And instead of working 30 hours a day, 8 days a week, they start to look like they're having a slightly normal life. And that looks appealing to me. So that's really the play.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, Chip, I was thinking, and you referenced back before about, and I know this is going to lead us past a little bit more time than we wanted to go in this segment, but I think it's important to hit this because one of the things you mentioned about there's a generation now that wants to be able to pass this to the next generation, pass that ranch name on and that ground on to the next generation. I believe with where the price of real estate is getting, that we have to find other ways that we can become efficient and become profitable. And it's going to be in labor savings. It's going to be in better ROIs on the investments we already have in those places in order for us to compete with the folks that do have the money that can go spend, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on ranch land. I'm saying ranch land. That's not farmland because all the farmers say I'd pick that up in a minute. I'm saying ranch land that's out here at where it takes 40 acres to run a cow, where they can spend $3,000, $4,000 an acre. We can't do that and run a cow on it. So getting back to your deal about this, I think that's where some of this technology, we're going to have to look at it and have some willingness to embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. Because either we acknowledge the reality of things and we choose to do something about it. We, meaning maybe the mythical industry at large, but maybe it's just we, meaning an individual family who looks at the dynamic and says, we can sit and just watch. We can just manage decline. Right? Yeah, we're making a lot of money right now, but we also see the underlying components of folks who don't see a path forward saying, hey, this is the time to tap out, right? Now's the time to sell cows. We know, let's face it, we're going to be at 25 million cows in the not real distant future. And you and I will be long since dead before this country ever sees 30 million beef cows again. And so for some of the reasons you mentioned, prices, land prices and the like. And so either we find ways to embrace these things and give ourselves an opportunity to do it a little different. Right? If we're doing it like the neighbor, guess what? We're probably doing it wrong. So can we look at things where, for example, these tags can give us a very intense grazing map, to your point, something very simple. What if we found that through these very intensive grazing maps, there's large swaths of ground that we have for some reason the cows are not utilizing? Let's rectify that or get rid of that piece of ground or give it a different usage, right? Because now we can start to carve back. Maybe it's digital awareness of estrus alerts coming to your phone on a set of heifers, or even more concerning, maybe estrus alerts coming back at a time when the female should be bred. Maybe it's awareness of what our bull is doing, and we'll talk more about that certainly in an upcoming segment. Those things that hugely impact our day-to-day lives. And we're able to monitor those 24/7 and get feedback when we're at our kids' ball game, when we snuck away for the county fair, or when we're just asleep. We're getting awareness of what's going on that maybe offsets some of the need for yet another hired hand that's difficult to find, difficult to source, and more difficult to even keep, or yet another vehicle to run up and down the road just to blow tires and diesel off. So that's kind of what we're looking at, to exactly your point. How do we better utilize what we have to ensure our own sustainability?
You bet. Well, that conversation we just had there is a good segue to heading into where we want to go next, because I want to start talking about where we could see this being used. You've hit on some things, whether it's labor, our bulls, I mean, just knowing where cattle are at and efficiency use of a pasture and all those kinds of things. So when we come back, folks, we're going to continue down this road. Chip Kemp is my guest here today. We'll be back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. This segment today brought to you by Identity Beef from Neogen. Uncover your herd's potential with Identity Beef. In a world of variables that are beyond our control, there's a tool that can provide certainty for your breeding program. I'm talking about Identity Beef. It's the first genomic profile designed for crossbred commercial cattle. Now, here's a tool that's going to utilize DNA to rank the genetic merit for 17 key traits, from maternal to performance to carcass traits, as well as mitigate risk factors, for example, like congestive heart failure. It's time to take the gamble and the waiting game out of your breeding program. Make accurate decisions with confidence and uncover your herd's potential with Identity Beef. To learn more, contact your Neogen representative today or visit neogen.com/identity-beef. All right, Chip, let's continue on as we talk about the applications of where we see precision agriculture. Last segment, a great job of outlining some things and some needs that where we see this going. When we look at it now, and this is definitely, we'll talk a little bit more or later on, or maybe in this segment, of where you've definitely seen more interest in precision agriculture is with the ability to kind of keep track of these bulls. But that's now becoming more than just a commercial guy saying, hey, I want to keep track of my bulls. There's kind of some other stuff heading down the road here with purebred registered outfits too.
Absolutely. So you're right. The entry point for most folks with these sort of tools is going to be on bulls, right? These tools, they're a lot more expensive than the fly tag you put in last time. And so you need to be able to justify the ROI. Now, folks can find that ROI in females as well. And we can talk about that later. Yeah. But the big thing is bulls. And so, yeah, we need to know where he's at. But the biggest issue is he breeding cows or not? In breeding season, is he doing his job? And so I'm going to just highlight an example that you and I spoke about the other day. In spring breeding season, we have many thousands of bulls sporting these tags across the country in a variety of different climates and environments. And we had many bulls through health alerts during that season. However, there were 96 bulls that both through a health alert and their owners did something about it. And that means either there was a medical treatment that's logged, or you could see those animals removed from pasture, big country, down to a small lot. 96 bulls. Now, some of those were at the early part of the breeding season, some late. Of those 96, if we solved 5 open cows, we all know what that means, right? Mm-hmm. If we kept 5 cows from being open because of that singular intervention, you multiply that by a very real world example for only 2 months of 96 bulls, and you keep the cull value of the bull at play and all of those things, all in, that's well north of $1 million in terms of impact. And that's roughly, of those individual outfits, it was well north of $10,000 that stayed on the table at an individual ranch because of that tag. That's the primary point. And so commercial folks across the country have gotten really keen on being able to track these bulls. They can look every day and get a mounting report, so they see how much that bull's been mounting. They can compare him to the other bulls in their fleet and see, why is this guy mounting more or less? And we all know some of the old bulls don't mount as much as the young bulls. Doesn't necessarily mean who's breeding, who's not, but it is an indicator of a whole host of things: health, vitality, that sort of stuff. So we see the activity level. You get to track that bull if you're somebody who has some of the tags and cows as well. Now you're getting to see how he's actually interacting with the herd, right? Or maybe with the other bulls that are in his group. You can also identify that bull who lays down by the creek most of the time and doesn't do anything, and decide, okay, is that the $12,000 purchase I need to make again the next time? So going forward then, yes, to your point, many seed stock folks have started to see the excitement of this. One, they're producers too. They have the same problems that a commercial outfit has. But also they're very excited for some of the novel genetic traits that come from these tags, things we can maybe get to later in the call. But one of the things that you and I have talked about is I really appreciate the boldness of some seed stock outfits who are starting to realize that one of the ways they can serve their clients best is giving their client 24/7 awareness of what's happening to that new bull purchase. So we have some seed stock operators for the first time this fall who are going to saturate their bull sales with what we call an XT Pro tag. That's kind of our highest use tag in terms of skill set. And these sales, first couple that come to mind this fall will be Gerloff Farms in Missouri and Downey Ranch in Kansas. And every bull in their sales are going to have these tags available. And so if a producer has an interest, then they can take this thing home They personally are going to get awareness of the health of their bull, where their bull's located. Most importantly, during breeding season, they're going to be getting daily awareness if they go look at the mounting of this bull. But most importantly, if this bull deviates from his normal activity level, they're going to get an alert that says, hey, there's a health concern for this bull. Go check him out. You don't have to go search for that data. It gets pushed to your phone. And even if you say, well, we're really remote, trust me, the satellite will find him. He's not escaping the satellite. And so it gives you the opportunity to intervene during breeding season. Let's deal with it while there's a concern, as opposed to after the fact, in 60-day preg check. Well, it's a little late at that point, right? Now we've got open cows and we got to figure those things out. And so huge kudos. And there'll be many more seed stock operations that are doing that. And note, that is a huge investment on their part, right? That is a big outlay of cash that those seed stock folks are doing. That, hey, we're going to give you the tag and a free year's worth of software that they're footing the bill for, because that's customer service at a level that it's not that others can't or won't do that. The technology didn't exist before, right? It's just that simple. The technology didn't exist to do these things. So what a tremendous value add for those folks. And so then secondarily, I mentioned that these serious seed stock folks, as we start to accumulate data over time, as these tags kind of get saturated in their customers, I get very excited about the day when we wake up a few years from now and we have male service capacity EPDs. Those tools have just not been present in the industry either. And so that's a longer term, kind of more my genetic wonk side coming out in me a little bit. But I think that's going to be a very important tool. It's just a little bit longer term play.
Mm-hmm. As you were talking about this, I think there's application from the bull side of this, no matter what size of operation. And that is in terms of how you choose to use that information. From a large scale basis, anybody running a volume of bulls, I can't help but think back, and I know for folks that are listening that have went through ranching for profit, you're going to understand this term. And one of the practicums that they run us through is the oblimes, and how it's a very large scale operation, and the amount of waste in their operation just because they were over bull. They were running too many bulls. But I can't help but go back to that particular example, because for us in our operation here, I kind of run pretty lean and mean on bulls. I don't try to over bull. I don't want to be caught with my pants down, so to speak. But at the same time, I also want to know, and as you have a running age of bulls, you're definitely going to want to know what bulls are doing what, when, and how, and why, so that as you had mentioned a bit ago, bull sale buying season is going to start here for the fall, winter, and then it's going to pick up again in the spring. So, to me, I look at the bull side of things. It's a great entry point, and it's a really good way to even know, kind of what's going on from a remote standpoint in your herd.
Absolutely. And so to your point of different size outfits or how you run your bull batteries, to me, one of the beauties of this set of tools, be it some of the herd management tools or the wearable devices, is one of the things we see consistently is that it meets all producers, regardless of kind of size and scale. For example, you're right. If you got a 5-head bull battery out with a set of cows, and you learn over time that, man, I could be running 4 bulls out there, get the same job done. That's a huge shift in terms of opportunity, in terms of your dollar allocation. However, maybe you're a smaller producer and you run a single bull, or maybe you're a seed stock producer and you run a single bull intentionally behind an AI program so that you can make sure you keep pedigrees correct, right? Well, now the risk is really high, because if that bull's not mounting cows, you're all exposed, right? And so if we can identify that, and we don't have that same sort of risk of open cows. Same time, small producer, big producer, what we see are those folks who maybe their day-to-day full-time life is invested in cows. They see these things from the prism of everything we've been talking about the last few minutes. But also, a lot of times there's the flashlight cowboy. Maybe he or she's a teacher at school. Maybe they work at the local bank. And when they come home at night and they need to find a problem on a bull, or maybe they have some of these on some calving cows and they need to find that cow that's calving, the value proposition for them is it's late after a meeting, it's in the dark, and oh, by the way, it's almost always cold. That's just what we do. And so they can go right back out there, find that animal, identify the concern, address it. They didn't spend an hour and a half walking around for it because, oh, by the way, they know where the animal is. And so, again, a variety of value propositions. And one last thing I would say for any of the seed stock folks who are listening, one of the values for our customers who are going to do these sale day efforts, note, one of the things that's going to happen is those seed stock producers are also going to get those same alerts on their customers' bulls. And so they get to have some awareness of what those bulls are doing from a health standpoint. They too can help provide some interventions at times if they're starting to see that maybe a client of theirs is missing the alerts for some reason or another, and they just want to reach out and say, hey, can we check on that? So it gives the seed stock producer the opportunity to make sure any bulls they might have had to make right, it's solved on the front side as opposed to when there's a bigger problem. And the commercial client, as opposed to spending a couple $100s on insurance at a sale that they are never going to use. Let's take that same money and put it used in something that's a year-round herd management tool.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I couldn't help but think from a standpoint of a bull buyer myself is having some assurance that if you're a guy selling bulls and you think you got good bulls and you think they stand up and they're sound and they stay that way and all those kinds of things, my thought, I'm just going to throw this out there to the bull guys, put your money where your mouth's at. I think we've had this similar conversation in regards to DNA testing. If you're pretty confident in what you got going on, put your money where your mouth's at on this deal and then you get that information, because if these bulls aren't staying sound, as a bull seller and a bull buyer, everybody's going to know.
Well, to your point, Justin, the reality is I think everybody wants to be good at their craft, right? Everybody wakes up wanting to be good at their craft. And if you're producing the kind of bulls that people need, you need every tool. Yes, every tool to help them. But as the seed stock seller, you also need every tool in the toolbox: DNA, responsible genetic evaluation, openness to heterosis, these sort of tag tools, a good data collection, so that when you look a man in the eye and say, this bull is designed to do X, that you can do that with the absolute greatest confidence you know how to have, because you've put those things together. But if I'm a seed stock seller, we also want to acknowledge something. And this is going to hurt, but it's true. Cow numbers are going down. That means within the perimeter, the diameter of which you typically sell bulls. I hate to tell you, there are fewer cows now, and there'll be fewer cows next year. And so if you're going to continue to sell the same number of bulls, or like many of you are going to try to sell more this year, then you're going to have to grow your circle if you're going to do that. And so what kind of tools, what kind of efforts are you going to put in place that allow you to grow your sphere of influence so that you can still grow your business while serving more commercial clients? It's just the reality of where we find ourselves.
Boy, that's a good segue as we take a break here. When we come back, I think one of the things we can address with this is looking at HR issues, as you referred to with me, such as labor, things like that. And also later on in the show, I want to get into where is this potentially going. I think you've touched on a few things. We're going to continue down that road when we come back. But first, this message from the captain, Tim O'Byrne.
Hey everybody, Tim here. We're fixing to come up on 1 million downloads of our Working Ranch radio show podcast, which is really exciting. And it got me to thinking about another viral moment that we had back in 2017 when we ran a short Facebook video of the Safety Zone calf catchers. And it was so popular, it got 6.8 million views in the first 5 days. I want you folks to check it out, Safety Zone calf catchers. It's a great product for all producers. Keep you safe when you're working with baby calves, especially for old timers like me who maybe can't outrun those cows anymore. Check them out, Safety Zone calf catchers.
Calving season is a favorite time of year, but along with that special time are dangers, extra stress, and increased labor. Safety Zone calf catchers are all about safety and making processing new calves easier. Designed for ATVs or UTVs, one person can do the job and never be threatened by the protective mother cow. Make this and every calving season safer and easier with a Safety Zone calf catcher. Watch videos and customer testimonials or order yours today at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914. Affordable and made in the USA. Make your upcoming and all future calving seasons safer, easier, and stress-free. Durable and designed to work anywhere you can drive your ATV or UTV. Order online at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914 today.
Chip Kemp is my guest here today. He's with 701X. We're talking about, I wrote this on my notepad here, Chip, and that is doing more with less. Isn't that kind of overall, a little bit of kind of what we're sort of talking about? And when we get into that, I think one of the things, and I referenced this at the very end of the first segment about our ability to just go out and buy ranch land. So how do we take what we've got and use it? And one of the line items in somebody's budget is always going to be our overhead costs. And inside of that is going to be labor. HR, those kind of issues. And that's where when we start seeing precision agriculture becoming a part of ranching, that's the niche, or that's the area that it is helping with.
My colleagues hear me say this every day. You've heard me say that off air. Everything is an HR play. Everything we do, everything we talk about is an HR play in one fashion or another. And if we don't acknowledge that, think about the crop farmer, and we talk about this internal. What's the implication of auto steer in a tractor? So I can hire somebody who essentially doesn't know a blasted thing and put them in that seat and they can drive the other end. Why is that so important? Because I can't hire people who know anything anymore, or if I can't keep them.
Yeah.
And so same deal here. So maybe it's as simple. Maybe it's just as simple as maybe you're in the Midwest right now where all of a sudden things got dry in a hurry. Went from tropical rainforest to drought in a matter of about 4 weeks. And you have to pick up a piece of ground 30 or 45 minutes away, throw some cows on just to get along. What if I could tell you, and you can, like tomorrow, put a water monitor there that integrates with these wearable devices, throw these tags in the group of heifers you sent over there or the old cows that you sent over there. And every single day you can say, okay, everything's healthy. They're all there. They're in their fence, and I can tell they're drinking water. The water's not frozen. Yes, ideally, would I drive over there every day to check on them? Sure, but I don't have extra help, and I don't have extra hours. And so I can remotely monitor those cattle with a unique version of tool set and allow me to keep myself going, but in a manageable situation from my own time or somebody else's. Maybe it's the situation that by better using that BLM ground that maybe I have access to, right? And maybe I want to use some of these other solutions I've heard talk about, but they require this massive level of infrastructure, right? I got to bring in all these base stations and towers. I got to bring in a semi-load of product somewhere on the place to make these things connect. That's not the 701X way. One, BLM ground's not going to allow those towers. But two, the bigger issue is we want you to be able to buy one tag, put it in a cow, and it immediately works. Or buy 1,001 tags and put them in cows and they immediately work. Without this infrastructure need that becomes a little bit intensive and difficult to manage and monitor. And so how do we use our own personal time? How do we value our own time? And sometimes it's no more complicated than you send a child off to college. They're trained up well. You're right. You're really excited. They're coming back. They're enthusiastic. And they met a special someone when they were in college. And this spouse, you love this spouse. They're going to be a great member of the family, but they're not going to tolerate your son or daughter giving every waking moment every day to this endeavor. They want to be able to slip away for just 2 days to maybe go to the lake. So you make a path with some of these tools to be able to monitor, to have awareness that might make it appealing for that young couple then to say, there's still a spot. And the last example I'll point out, and I was really appreciative of it, of a young man who reached out just a number of days ago, ranches in southern New Mexico on a pretty large scale. And for those of you who know that territory, you know, it's big country.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged something that most folks don't like to acknowledge. Roundup alone wastes 4 weeks of our life because we don't know where anything's at. And we're out there searching for it. He said, if I could just use these tools to help me identify my resources, if I can just cut Roundup in half, not only think about the HR implications of that, I'm probably not to lame up a horse or two. If there's helicopters involved, I don't need that for 2 more weeks. But he said the flip side is I make my calves worth more money because before those calves who came in at the backside of the 4 weeks, they're 3 or 4 weeks behind in terms of the precondition or the regimen, the feeding regimen to kind of bring them up to speed to sell. They're a month behind in weight. So what happens, I cost myself when I take those to town, right? Because they're going to sort these groups off. Things get all kinds of wonky. And so he saw the value proposition for a unique way to solve both an HR problem, but then also the ability to add more value and uniformity to his calves.
Mm-hmm. Chip, as we're talking about the HR side of this and the labor side of this, a thought that comes to my head a little bit is this saying, and I'll tie this in, is necessity is the mother of invention. And as I think about this, I think we really have to ask ourselves this. If we're at a particular point and it's either you lose the ranch or you stay going with it, you make some hard decisions. And sometimes those hard decisions usually is cutting away the dead wood and to know where we need to be at with things. And I think if we could be honest and take a hard look at some of those kinds of things, it would cause us to say, and this is where the word necessity is the mother of invention, or in this case, it is maybe necessity is the mother of looking at alternatives, right? And that's where I see some of this conversation when we start talking about HR and labor issues is like, okay, if money's not flowing in here like we want it to, and we've got to start doing something differently, or we're going to lose this, what could we do differently? And I think that's where we're starting to see with the HR conversation we're having here today with precision agriculture technology that's available in our industry.
Spot on. And so we've been focused in on kind of one skill set in most of this call with what we call our XT Pro tag. But we also have a companion tag that Bluetooth meshes. You can read up on that. So this tag is essentially, it's an EID with some Bluetooth capability. For $20, it's designed to go in your calves. So most of us don't know how many calves we have, and we don't know where they're at. If you're somebody who's able to calve early in life, you get inventory control, you get inventory awareness, frankly, would be lovely for most of us. But then also some of us on here are doing things like we're involved in various PVP programs and the like. Good, it's wonderful. These tools actually allow us to age and source a calf. It's not a claim. You get to age and source. It's factual. You have the proof. You can pull it up on your phone for anybody who wants to see it. And so maybe there's a way where you've had to balance your lack of inventory awareness, or maybe you live in an area where predation is a problem. And if an animal is going to be reimbursed through some of the government programs that solve that, what do you got to do? You got to know where the animal is, and you got to know where they're at in a hurry, right? You got to be able to prove it. And so if we can have one of these tags simply to be able to prove that predation situation, one, from an HR standpoint, you actually know where it is. You can go find it, where you otherwise probably didn't know for weeks, if you ever knew. But then the other piece is it's clearly a value proposition. Some of you live in states where there are serious programs to help offset some of that loss. And so for me, as I think about how we carve out these nimble spots, it's not a one size fits all, and we're not going to pretend that it is. But I think that's the real beauty of the 701X model. The 701X experience is we recognize that we all do share some very similar problems. We all do have some kind of unique operational situations that are a little different. We don't pretend that everybody's going to look exactly alike. But what you can do is you can go to 701x.com. You can take a quick look at the suite of tools, and you can buy a singular tag, just one, put it in an animal. See, Justin, to your point, as you're trying to decide on the edges, what can give? What can I do a little differently? Just buy one tag. You'll have to download the app so you can see it on your phone. It's a very intuitive herd management system. By the way, serious seed stock folks, if you finally want a herd management system that's worth actually utilizing, you should look at this because it integrates and all those kind of things. But now you just bought one tag. If it doesn't work, call and yell at me.
Your number. Just kidding.
Yeah. If you can trust me, you can find it. But the beauty is you didn't have to go all in. You didn't have to jump off the deep end. It wasn't buying another $100,000 tractor. It wasn't buying another piece of ground. It wasn't hiring another human. Throw one or two tags in. See if they change some things for you personally. Maybe it's as simple as you knew when an animal got out of the fence, like quickly. So instead of waiting till it's out until you find out 3 days later they're out, you can go solve it immediately. Or maybe an animal's out of the fence and Joe goes down to Justin's place, and you at least know it's floating at Justin's place. So you can call Justin and say, hey, that cow's down there. Can I grab her the next time you bring cows up? And so that's my encouragement is don't let it intimidate you too much. Just buy a tag, try it. If you don't like it, don't buy another one.
All right. Let's take another break here. When we come back, I want a quick segment here, and I want to talk about where we headed with precision agriculture in this kind of technology and where it can be used. And you've touched on a few things that it can do. Some of that's, in fact, I'm looking at your website here right now. And I mean, some of those things that I see is very useful to any size ranch operation. So when we come back, I want to talk about where this technology is headed as we look ahead to the future. This segment today brought to you by the American Gelbvieh Association. Meet modern industry demands for feedlots and carcass traits with Gelbvieh and Balancer Genetics. Find out more at gelbvieh.org.
Capitalize on crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer bulls. Raise replacement females with added fertility, increased longevity, and greater productivity. Gelbvieh and Balancer influence females wean more pounds of calf per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer influenced cattle offer increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and have excellent carcass merit. Balancers add the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. This year, make your crossbreeding count with Gelbvieh and Balancer genetics.
All right, Chip, as we round up our conversation here today, I want to just talk about where precision agriculture and this technology is headed. Back to our last segment of continuing to solve the problem of HR issues.
So, well, it's going to go a lot of places, I guess, and hopefully those places are problem solving by nature. That's what we're looking to do here, provide solutions. And so there'll be some novel phenotypes, some novel measures. But one area I want to talk about that's kind of front and center, it's a hot topic. I appreciate that there are folks that are in much higher positions than I have to think about, who are exposed to the concerns about various national food security plays, biosecurity at large. One of the areas that we ought to be thinking about, and we ought to be talking about it really hard, is whether it's relative to screwworm or whether it's relative to foot and mouth down the road or the next malady. These tools, I would conjecture, should be saturated around the border, both north and south, if I had my druthers. And the reason being is because if they were done in a fashion where they really empower these ranchers to live their lives and do their jobs really well. But I could certainly see collaborative efforts where you might also open some of the health awareness that comes with these tools to folks who need and want to protect the industry from certain serious concerns. And so maybe it's a situation where if we had these saturated, 100 miles north of the border at present, and when the sterile flies are available, if we were getting the signals, and we can do this, we do it daily to be able to identify those animals who have health concerns. Oh, by the way, days and days before a human's eyes can see them. It's one of the things we have to remember. They're prey animals, right? So they hide illness for as long as they possibly can. So days before we'll ever denote an illness with even a very skilled cowboy, we can identify something's going on. And if we were able then to appropriately share that information with the approval of the owner, with the right authorities, now imagine if we had some newly created sterile flies to release. Wouldn't we want to release those where we have the most saturated potential problem of screwworm? Of course we would. That's where we'd want to start. And so I would say from a national food security standpoint, these are the kind of tools we have to be starting to think about bringing into our arsenal. We have to use 2025 tools to do some of this. And so that's maybe a little bit of a deviation from the rest of our conversation, but I think it's important because it affects us all, right? It affects us all, whether we like it or not. Novel trait-wise, though, what if I were to tell you that there's reason to think, we can't do this now, so we are talking about what's in the future. Mm-hmm. We might be able to give you a PAP diagnostic in pasture. How exciting for those folks who work at elevation, right? So we're doing some projects right now looking at this XT Pro tag to identify those sort of things, and that bleeds over into congestive heart failure. Yep. Digital preg checks, heat tolerance EPDs, those things are definitely, these are like weekly occurrences at 701X. We find some data points we're like, oh, you know what that is? And it's another thing that we need to be monitoring. A couple other things that are coming pretty fast for the firm. Here in the fall of 2025, we're implementing a new feedlot system in a handful of small research yards. That this feedlot system provides some of these very specific health awareness and intake awareness pieces and water usage, which is going to be an important piece of our language in the beef business going forward. So we're implementing that into a very progressive feedlot system. We hope that feedlot system to go commercial in 26. That is a bit of a game changer for a whole host of things and things we could talk about. But those are some of the areas that 701X is thinking about at present.
Well, I think you said some things there that definitely makes everybody spurs their interest to see where this can go and just that ability. Again, it's going back to if it can save us a little time, little labor on all of that, that's the thing. I think, Chip, one thing I want to address real quick is people's hesitancy to say, well, if that's coming, let's wait for that. How do you deal with somebody that says, well, I don't know that I want to jump in just yet because what if things change? How are you guys going to adapt with what I've already bought?
We download uploads all the time to our ear tags. People don't even know, right? The system is designed so that we can pass along the bulk of the improvements remotely, and you just get the ability for a new alert that you didn't have yesterday. You don't necessarily know, other than we'll let you know on your phone that, hey, you can get this kind of alert now, it's going to pop up. But you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to bring the cow up. Now, it is technology, and we do make them better. Every day, we have a large portion of our team who's devoted to making these products more durable, tougher, longer lasting,
Yeah.
whatever. So that's every day. So if the tags aren't even better in 3 years than they are today, then we failed at our craft, right? We lose. That's a given. We should continue to improve. But the reality is if you're going to wait, the only thing I would ask you is, how long can you sit idle? Honestly, ask yourself, what's a 3 years sitting on the sidelines? That's essentially a tenth of your opportunity in the beef business that you just kind of wished away. And so my encouragement, again, I do understand hesitancy, and skepticism is not a bad thing. That's a responsible thing. You shouldn't just believe something because Justin and Chip are talking about it. You should believe it, that you do some due diligence, do your homework, potentially consider buying one tag. If it doesn't work, you're out of tank of diesel. Throw in the trash and move on. But then the flip side is, if it does work, ask yourself, the next time you're going to go buy a new UTV for $30,000 that drives exactly like the one you have, it does the same thing, it's the same size, you're going to spend $30,000 to get the exact same thing again. Why? Just because the neighbors bought a UTV. Or maybe you take that money and saturate some of your animals with these tools and see if it doesn't change your life just a bit.
Sure. All right. So the website, 701x.com, if folks want to find out more information, any more as far as if they got questions, what else?
That's it. We're an open book. Reach out. If anybody wants to reach out to me, you can shoot me a direct email, chip.kemp@701x.com. The numbers are on the website. I look forward to talking to you.
You bet. Well, Chip, great conversation here today. I've always said, when we do these interviews, I don't want it to sound like an infomercial, and I hope we didn't come across that way, because I think the conversation was deeper than that. And I appreciate that. I've always appreciated your intellect and that side of things, and looking at this, where we're at with the industry. And the only way we can have these conversations is for an industry or somebody in the industry that's actually doing it. So thank you for being here today on the program.
Justin, thank you so much.
You bet. We'll stick around. We're going to take a look at our long-range weather when we come back.
Fascinated by our wild weather? Now you can learn, appreciate, and understand the weather in your own backyard with the new Tropo Rain Gauge. Having achieved the highest rating of any product reviewed by the weatherstationexperts.com, the Tropo boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit measurerain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY. That's RAINDAY for free shipping and 10% off. Go to measurerain.com.
Today's long-range weather brought to you by Long Range Cattle Dewormer. For a lot of us, we're going to be working cattle this fall or through these winter months, and while we have them in the chute, it's a good time to continue on with a good parasite control program. None other than Long Range Epinephrine. With its extended release dewormer, you're going to get 150 days of parasite protection in just one single dose. Take the pressure off those cows by getting rid of the parasite pressure in those cattle with Long Range Epinephrine. To find out more, go to their website at longrangedewormer.com. Well, joining us now with a look at our long-range weather is meteorologist Don Day. And Don, as we get to this time of the year, no doubt there's definitely a lot more variabilities from week to week that we have with our weather. It's sure been nice to see some of that moisture falling down into the West Coast and California, in that area that's been relatively dry. I couldn't tell. Did much of that make it up into the Four Corners area that has also been very dry?
The answer is no, but certainly the remains of Tropical Storm Mario certainly brought some really nice rain to California, western Arizona, parts of Nevada. And the Four Corners area, fortunately, just before this week, did have a 2-week period where we did see some really good rain. We've seen big catch-ups in precipitation in New Mexico in particular, and some parts of western Colorado. Now, there's still a big deficit, but what's interesting is late August and early September aren't the weeks that we usually expect it to get wet. So those areas in parts of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, the parts of the southwest United States have picked up more rain in the last 3 weeks than they saw in June or July. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a late season surge, need a lot more, but hey, we'll take it.
You bet. So I know one of the things you had talked about is, boy, the models are showing kind of all over the board on this. And basically it's saying we're going to see a change. We just don't know yet what that's going to look like when we look about 7 to 10 days out from now.
Yeah, this time of year, this is when we start to look more north and less south. And what we see up north across the North Pacific is a strengthening jet stream wind that's going to go from, about Japan and Korea, then across the North Pacific into Alaska. We're starting to see really stormy weather in Alaska. We're starting to see stormy weather up in the Aleutians, up on that northwest side of the Pacific. When you see that and you see those strengthening jet stream winds, there is a real indication there that in about a week or two, that weather will translate into North America. And when you get a strong jet stream wind hit the continent, it buckles. It starts to cause curves. It starts to cause dips. It causes high pressure and low pressure systems on the larger scale to begin to form. And this is when you start to see that transition into a fall pattern. So we see it. There's a bit of a lag. Usually it's about 10 to 14 days after we see that North America sees those changes. So those changes take us right at the end of September into early October.
Okay. So I think one of the things I think about a little bit with some of this, I know all the guys that's been cutting feed for silage or getting those kind of things, that's fine. I mean, workable there. We still yet to get into that corn harvest just yet. Are we going to see any of this weather that's coming across dip in there and cause some issues if it brings some moisture to our corn crop?
Yeah. In fact, we're going to see over the next 10 to 14 days some rain, especially in the northern and northwest areas of the Corn Belt. That could be a bit of a concern for the beginnings of harvest. No, we don't see a big shot of real severe cold yet, but there is going to be some wetness. Now, on the flip side of that, they went through an extended period through most of early September with really not much rain. So the ground has dried out a bit, but there is going to be some, let's say, untimely precipitation in parts of the Corn Belt. October isn't necessarily a month where you see one pattern hold for the whole month, but we do see some episodes of stormy weather and certainly shots of cold. So we can see the writing on the wall. We're not there yet. We're seeing all the signs of changes to come. So, hey, start watching the birds, start watching the animals here over the next week or two and see if they start making their adjustments, because they always seem to know before we do.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, Don, appreciate it and look forward to talking to you next week.
See you then.
You bet. And again, that is meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-range weather. If you want to tune in each and every morning to his daily video podcast, you can find it at dayweather.com. Today's weather brought to you by Long Range Cattle Dewormer. Find out more at longrangedewormer.com.
It all starts with a tag. Identifying each animal allows you to better manage the entire herd and control your operation's future. For nearly 70 years, producers have chosen Allflex for individual animal management. With Allflex, you get the most trusted portfolio of ID solutions. Whether you need stock or custom visual tags, electronic tags, tissue sampling units for DNA collection, or syringes, bring the Allflex advantage to your operation today. Visit allflexusa.com to learn more.
Thanks again for joining us on this week's edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. If you missed something here today, you want to go back and listen to it again, any major podcast platform out there has our show, or you can go directly to our site at workingranchradio.com. If you like it, send it out to somebody, send the link out, leave us a rating or a review. We sure appreciate that. And if you need to get a hold of me, you can send me an email at justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Hey, real quick, we're not going to have a show next week. We are going to be preconditioning calves this next week, so plenty busy with that. Be sure to tune in a couple weeks for a new episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show, which, by the way, is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. I'm Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.